Human rights advocate Susan Goff is calling for the closure of all jail blocks used to isolate wards at juvenile correctional facilities. Now, the call comes against an independent Commission of Investigations report on conditions at the Rio Cobre Juvenile Correctional Center in St. Catherine. Good morning, Ms. Sue. Welcome to Smile Jamaica once again.
Good morning, Neville. Thank you for the invitation.
It's our pleasure. I hope all is well with you and the family.
Thank you. Morning, Dahlia.
Morning, my dear.
Tell us where we are with all of this. I read the stories. Tell us where we are and what are you asking for or what are you demanding?
Well, this comes out of a report that Indicom had done recently on conditions at the Rio Cobre Correctional Center for Boys. And they had done this report as a result of having received anonymous tips about the conditions there and the treatment at the facility. I think that the report, which they tabled in Parliament recently, details some very, very troubling conditions and situations at the facility, particularly having to do with what is called the jail block, which is used to isolate boys who have been deemed to have behaved badly or taken part in some incident that the authority there felt needed discipline. Unfortunately, some of the things that were listed as offenses were very arbitrary and minor. Things such as not being on the block at the time that it was time for lockdown, or climbing trees, or going downstairs without a shirt. These are some of the things listed in the Indicom report. But what is very troubling is the details of that facility, that isolation block, where the boys who were placed there for up to 72 hours were required to strip down to their underwear, that they slept on the floor on a foam mattress with no sheets, etc. And then you had an incident detailed where the keys for the facility were not always readily available. And on one instance, a boy who was locked away had a seizure and they could not reach him because it turns out that the only key to that facility, that section, had been taken off premises by a member of staff. You also have that the boys who are locked away do not have access to a bathroom and have to call out to be allowed to go to the bathroom. And one boy was detailed as saying that he was having severe cramps before he could be allowed to use the bathroom.
Wow.
Some of these descriptions, unfortunately, remind me of some of the conditions and the problems that existed at Armadale. And to me, it is a disgrace that 11 years afterwards, the Department of Correctional Facilities Services has not learned those lessons. The inaccessibility of keys, for example, played a part in delaying access to those girls that night. Yet here we are 11 years later, and the same Department of Correctional Services has not yet learned the importance of ready access to keys if they are locking children away.
I know you're deeply disturbed by it, Suzanne. So let's talk about action. What are some of the things you're hoping will happen? One of the things is physically you're saying the isolation block is a no-no.
Absolutely. And that is one of the recommendations of Indicom, is that block should be closed. But I'm going further to say the use of isolation at juvenile correctional facilities must end. It is not an acceptable way to deal with children, and it must be ended. It is in fact harmful to children. Isolation has been shown to have serious effects on persons who are isolated, more so a child. So it is necessary for the Department of Correctional Services, for the Ministry of National Security, to do away with that practice and to institute other more beneficial measures for dealing with problems that they may encounter.
One of the things, and we were discussing this yesterday as well, Suzanne, is do we need more training as it relates to dealing with children? Because some of the things we're saying is that, emotionally, mentally, are we understanding them? And that a lot of what they do in these facilities comes from a place that if we don't understand it, we are not able to address it. And that isolation and other draconian types of measures will not work.
Yes, I think that there is a need definitely for a completely different approach. And this does also raise the issue of whether in fact the Department of Correctional Services and the Ministry of National Security are the best placed ministries and departments to have care of children, because it seems over time that there has been a reluctance to move fully towards that new and more effective approach for dealing with children. We need to remember that one of the reasons for the mission statement of the correctional services is supposed to be rehabilitation. And this is so important when you are dealing with children. Yet many of the measures and approaches are very harsh, as you say, draconian. So yes, I think it is a need to review the approach entirely. And yes, there will be more training, but you also are going to need to have the involvement of persons such as psychologists, counselors, and the kind of training for the persons who are in charge of the children on a day-to-day basis that says that hitting children with a stick is not acceptable. And we have that detailed in the report, that the superintendent told Indicom that he had had to reprimand correctional officers for hitting children with a stick as recently as 2020. And I have to ask, what happened beyond the reprimand? Did he report this abuse to the childcare, to the CPFSA as is required under the Child Care and Protection Act? Because someone who hits a child with a stick in a correctional facility has no place remaining in that facility. So yet a completely different approach is needed.
Mrs. Goff, I'm reading our story here, and it says, Mrs. Goff said she has no confidence in the Ministry of National Security to take the steps necessary to improve conditions for persons being held in correctional facilities. I don't know if you said that, but if you did, why don't you have any confidence?
Yes, I said that, and I will say it again.
Why don't you have any confidence?
I'm looking at the long history of the Department of Correctional Services and the Ministry of National Security, and the numerous reports and incidents over the years which have required changes in the way in which the Department of Corrections is run and treats with those in its custody. And we go back as far as Armadale, where there were numerous recommendations made which have not been carried out. Even last year, let us look at the Noel Chambers matter. Let us look at the handling of the mentally ill in prisons. People have been there for decades without going back to court, etc. And the conditions that are detailed there are really an example of systemic problems which the Ministry of National Security and the Department of Correctional Services cannot feign ignorance of. They know what they are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. They have not sought to change them. And it is only when these matters come to public attention that there is this flurry of commitment and promises, etc. But do we know actually what changes have taken place? I know that the minister has said that there is a audit report which he has on his desk, which has to go to cabinet and then to parliament, etc. But a year after Noel Chambers died, we, the public, do not know what changes, if any, have taken place, what accountability there has been, if any, for any of the failings of the department and the various persons in charge. So no, unfortunately, I don't really have much confidence in the Department of Correctional Services or the Ministry of National Security to correct on the ground what needs to be corrected.
All right.
Thanks, Ms. Sue. Stay safe. Good to see you always.
Human rights advocate Suzanne Goff. Up next, library services and COVID-19. How are they coping? Candice Leverage joins us for the discussion. Soon come.